Hey guys, Doug here from AnimeCons TV. Not expecting to have to do another episode so quickly, but with the Otakon news that just broke recently, I wanted to talk to a couple people about it to get their opinions, and thankfully Lauren and John from Gunpla 101 and a lot of other places on the internet were able to join me and talk about kind of what our impressions are on the Otakon news. So I want to thank them again for joining me, and with that further ado, here's my interview with them. Thanks. Hey guys, Doug here. Just real quick before we get to this week's episode of AnimeCons TV, I had a little bit of technical difficulty recording with Skype. It looked like everyone was getting full on in the screen, but then when we looked back at the video, John got a little bit cut off, so my apologies, John. I wanted to say thank you once again to John and Lauren for joining me for this week's episode because we got into some really good discussion. Unfortunately, the video is not the best quality, and we didn't want to try and recreate the whole thing, so it's a little weird. Thankfully, it's better if you just listen to it and everything like that. So, a few little technical difficulties, but we're doing all right, and hopefully we'll be able to give another better in-person interview with them very soon. As always, thank you guys for watching, and enjoy this week's episode. Thanks. Right. Welcome back to AnimeCons TV, everybody. There's been some very interesting news with Otakon this week, and I'm bringing in two friends who I've seen at several Otakons, have gone to several conventions themselves, and they let me talk about Gundam on some of the websites they run and everything like that. So without further ado, I'm going to let our guests this week introduce themselves.
Thanks, Doug. Well, I'm Lauren, and this is my husband, John. And I guess what we're most known for these days is we write Gunpla 101. That's gunpla101.com. And it's a tutorial site that shows everyone how they can build Gunpla.
I've learned more than a few tricks myself, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that makes us kind of unlikely guests to talk about the news. I mean, before Gunpla 101 was my main thing, I used to go by the Otaku Journalist. I still do. And I found myself in the position of kind of breaking some news on Twitter, though it was not an exclusive.
I this was so weird. Yeah. So you found out this news about Otakon, and I guess the news is that they are kind of seeing how things go, and they put out the thing saying we're watching carefully whether or not we'll be able to hold Otakon 2021 or if we'll have to close our doors forever. And they put out a page for looking for donations. So you kind of broke the news to a lot of people, including myself. How did you find out about this news?
Did you get this email, John?
I still haven't got it, but I'm trying to recall what account I used to sign up for my Oticon membership.
Well, I always sign up for your Oticon membership.
Oh, okay.
I have them like saved in my 1Password. I mean, that's kind of what happens when you're married. Everyone takes a different task. Like, I'm the one who signs us up for Oticon every year. And then you're the one who checks the IRS website to see, wait a minute, how's Oticon doing after we get the news?
Yeah. So you got a just random email.
Yeah, because I'm a member of Otacorp. Because what people don't always realize is that when you're signing up for Otakon every year, you're not really signing up to go to an event. You're renewing your membership, one of the perks of which is you get to attend the event.
And this is also something that happens also with Anime Boston. It's the event run by the New England Anime Society, and it's why they, it's not like you're buying a ticket or you're buying a badge. The language is often you're buying a membership.
Yeah, I guess it's because these are 501c3s.
Mm-hmm. But this email with this news went out to people on the newsletter, and I saw you just commenting on it, and I was like, wait, what's going on? And, I've covered Otakon as press for almost 10 years now. I've lost track at this point. And I was like, checking my email, like, what's going on? And I had to get a copy of the email from you to see this news.
Yes, I
And
forwarded it to a couple different journalists who were covering the news. I was just like, I didn't expect to be the person breaking this news because it was just a standard boilerplate email, which I assume they meant to send out to all members.
yeah, it was. And before we get too much further along, I want to preface a lot of what I'm going to be saying is that I know for me personally, Otakon is one of my favorite conventions. I always have a great time every year I go. So if I'm taking them to task, it's not to be mean. But there's some stuff that's really kind of frustrating for me as someone that always looks at this con and thinks they do things well or they're always trying to do things better. So I just want to preface that. But as a member of press, I never got it, and we're now recording this a full 24 hours after that newsletter went out,
Mhm.
and I still have not seen anything from a press channel. The only thing on both their Twitter and their Facebook pages is a thing saying some people got this email and were wondering if it's really us. Yes, it's real. And the comments, so many of the comments are like, "Is what real?" Like it's a really kind of sloppy rollout, and
Yeah, that's not great ops if you have to be like, yes, it's real, if it doesn't look legitimate.
Right. And the messaging, I think, is very important for these kind of communications, is like planning it out, making sure it goes out probably to press first before you just generally spread it to the public and then say, by the way, we're not in great financial position is really like it's a weird thing to come through this channel.
yeah, I mean the fans are going to be the ones that are possibly donating it, so I understand you want to get it direct to them, but the newsletter first really seemed like a strange outlet. So again, Otakon has kind of put the call up that they are in some tight financial straits. Did this come as a surprise to you guys? Where did you guys land on reacting to the news?
Yeah, as I put in my tweet, I said I was very surprised that they were in such a tight position. Because, I mean, on the one hand, they weren't holding the event last year, so they
Mm-hmm.
weren't able to make money on the event. But on the other hand, they weren't spending money, right?
Uh, well, it's more complicated than that, and I tried to
Wait,
do some research
we should
on this.
we should preface that John's an economist,
Yeah, so that's a good place to
which is why
start.
he's here.
And I'm an economist, and I don't, my day job is not this kind of economics, but overall, I did some open source research once I saw and heard this news from Lauren to say, what are the latest financial disclosures? Because as a 501c3, they have to publicly release their financial disclosures every year. And so I just pulled the last reported year, which I think was 2018
It was 20.
or 2019. I
Yeah,
don't know which
one of
one was
them's
available.
well, as someone responded to my tweet, one of them is in the process, but I guess because of COVID, the IRS is behind. So it's not like Oticon skipped reporting a year. It's just it's not all.
Right.
It's just lagging.
So those reports can tell you a little bit of information. I didn't do a deep analysis of it to really fully get a grasp of their financial situation, but I could tell at a high level, like revenue to expenses, they're pretty tight. They're not walking away from Otakon in 2018 with a large sum of money from the convention event itself. Um, I will say it was very clear that they're not paying salaries to anybody. So like there's not a lot of expenses except the event expense. However, having worked some cons in the past, I would assume, and I don't have any information to back this, and don't have any sources who have told me anything, but I would assume that the convention center cost is pretty high for the DC Convention Center.
As someone who has been, uh, I used to be the facilities manager for Anime Boston, and I would see some of those payments, and yes, that is one of the largest single costs you'll face for a convention. And this is something that a lot of people sometimes don't realize is that many conventions, and Otakon especially prides itself on being, by fans for fans, and because making themselves a not for profit. So they're not making money on anything that goes for badge costs or whatever goes back into running the event. So
yeah, on the one hand, it's great. It's like they're just like us, the people putting it on, and on the other hand, oh, they're just like us. I mean, they might not have professional event experience. I mean, a lot of people who volunteer with Otakon definitely do, but it's not. It's.
I feel like having volunteered for several years at Anime Boston and some other cons, when you volunteer at a convention, you're not always a pro at it at the start, and
you have the
time,
you have the enthusiasm,
mm-hmm.
but I guess sometimes that's not enough, and that's why like a lot of cons like Anime Expo pay a salary to some of their people year round in order to keep that thing going.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean, if I remember when Otakon was canceled and they were going to turn the convention center into a field hospital for COVID. So they're like, well, we definitely can't let you have the convention here. It's just, shouldn't they have gotten their deposit back?
That's a lot of the legal thing. Like some of it is they may have gotten some of the deposit back, but not all of it. You have to put down deposits years in advance, especially for big venues like that. So there's that. And you also have to look at some of the other things you've seen for Otakon, like they had to have the spin-off con in Otakon Vegas, which many of us were surprised lasted more than 1 year because it seemed like it was such a poor decision.
There was always a rumor that it was like a vacation for Otakon volunteers.
Yeah.
So if you volunteer with us, you get to go to Vegas.
I don't know if I want to touch that rumor necessarily, but I will say what I did see in the financial disclosure from, I believe it was 18, is that Oticon Vegas was very, very small. They did break it out as a separate like income stream compared to the main event. And like the main event grossed, I think, about $2.5 million in revenue. So that's not including expenses. Oticon Vegas was like 46K or something. It was not a big number. So that could be part of the reason why they're having trouble financially compared to some other not-for-profit cons. The other thing that I would think might have happened is the rumor that I had heard is that they have a contract for 5 years with the convention center in DC, and they made the move to DC in 2017, I think was the first year, from Baltimore. And I think last year would have been year 4, if I'm doing the math correctly.
Yeah, I mean, they just moved, and it turned out to be a bad time. I mean, no one could have foreseen.
Yeah. And anybody who's worked in cons long enough knows that when you move a convention, you see a dip the first year anyway, as people reacclimate to the new location and learn like all those memories from Baltimore. You kind of like, you need to relearn, do I want to go to this new convention in a new city? The cost in DC is way higher than the cost in Baltimore. So there's like a lot of factors, and I think they saw a dip from that. Plus, Otakon Vegas probably wasn't the moneymaker that maybe they thought it would be, or maybe didn't actually return as much as they put into it. I don't know that for sure, but there's probably a couple different factors. But I would say they're not the only con that's at risk.
Yeah, I think this is just kind of it's the most prominent one. I think there's, before 2021 ends, and it feels like weird saying this as we're recording in January, I still think we are going to see that there's going to be a couple conventions that just can't recover. And it's unfortunate, but this is, part of it is being not for profit. So you can't keep too much in reserve. You do need to have some on hand and things like that. But there's some things you just can't predict. So, and I guess the next question I want to ask though is, as we're seeing this and we don't know what the final fate is going to be, what are some lessons you think some convention organizers need to take about this, like from Otakon's example, either as what to do or what not to do, kind of cautionary tale?
That's a really hard question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just fans.
Yeah.
It's hard to say how you avoid, because I don't think Otakon necessarily did anything wrong per se.
Yeah, for not foreseeing a global pandemic.
Right. And I don't think they made poor choices. I mean, maybe you could argue the Las Vegas Otakon wasn't the best decision, but when they made that decision, I think they were sitting on plenty of revenue and they were in a different situation, and no way could they have predicted in 2 years or 3 years there would be a global pandemic.
That the country would just completely bungle, and it's just.
I think this is a tough one, but maybe it comes back to like contract terms and going forward, being prepared for maybe having to cancel.
I do think about, like, was it let's say that the pandemic never happened. Was moving to DC a good idea? It's just, is it nostalgia that makes me think that it belongs in Baltimore? I know that they left because they could not get the Baltimore Convention Center to commit to expanding or give them a timeline of what it would look like. So they called their bluff and walked.
Yeah. But at the same time, I look at this at the lens, and again, I don't have all the information. I wonder, if there were some things that they did that's like, we have to do this. It's always been this way. And like after Vegas was, started to see that was not the financial success they planned on, could they have said, okay, here's some areas where we need to cut costs a little bit more? And like I look at, their staff is a level that I look at a lot for conventions, and I know there's, no one convention has it perfect. But I sit there and wonder, okay, you've got however many 100 people on staff. Do you need all these people here? And I think, again, I could be wrong. So
yeah, Oticon staffing is one of the most exclusive that there is. Like, in order to be on Oticon staff, you need to have 2 recommendations from existing staff members, or you need to have like 5 years is it called a gopher?
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't think they kind of reset the staff. You guys all 3 of us have been on Anime Boston staff as a comparison. And basically every year you have to reapply for your position.
Yes.
Unless you're one of their executives that are elected. So it kind of gives the staff kind of a chance to say, do we need this large of a department in this area, reassess and stuff like that. So you kind of trim some of the fat there. And I have to wonder if at the very similar size to Anime Boston, if that's something Otakon could do, should be doing. And again, that's just one example, but also just looking at what are some other areas where we could have, leaned up a little bit more and things like that, perhaps. And I know they've had some great musical acts in the past, but they've had,
we had jam projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like, concerts that have been incredible, but they've been like 3 headliners. And it's like, maybe we should have only brought 2 this year, or things like that. And that's, again, hard to predict.
Japanese guests and Japanese bands, you're right, are very expensive.
But they also attract so many attendees. And remember how Otakon, like, they added another day, the Matsuri Day on Thursday?
Yeah.
I mean, they got bigger and bigger.
I think, Lauren, what you actually said there's this danger of growing, right? When your con is growing rapidly or fast, and you just keep trying to go bigger and better and bigger and better, sometimes you get yourself in a trap. And I think it could be the case that Otakon was in this position to begin with because they made the move, because they had been growing so rapidly in Baltimore. They outgrew their current convention space. They had to make a move, and then they still didn't cut back when they made the move. They tried to go bigger to attract more people, and then that didn't work out for reasons.
Yeah. And with growth, eventually you reach the point where you cannot have any more attendees in your space, and you hit an attendance cap, and then all of a sudden that puts a cap on how much revenue you can, get per attendee, and you either have to raise prices or say, okay, this is the most we can bring in. And
Doug, I'm wondering if all the people who are listening to this or watching this know that Otakon is over 20 years old. Like, it's one of the top 10 cons in America by attendees. It's just one of the most storied cons there is. And we've seen much smaller cons have problems. Like, what was that stupid con that decided to have a buffet in the middle of the pandemic because they're like, we'll die if we don't.
Right. I don't remember.
Yeah, and this is
there's so many small cons and small con stories that you hear about now that exist, right? And then there's the
and that didn't surprise me at all. Where this guy's like, "Well, I had to have everyone cough on the buffet in a pandemic, or else our con would die." But I never thought that Otakon would be in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, and like for me personally, like again, I've been going. This would have been, or last year would have been my 20th year going to Otakon, and I did not get in at the beginning. And it's weird to think, like, we hope Otakon's, gets back on its feet and things get better. But if Otakon has to close, this is going to be a thing that has a huge effect on the convention landscape. There wasn't really any other big convention in that kind of late summer,
in the mid-eastern seaboard.
Yeah.
At this time.
And you're right, Doug, that what will happen if Otakon does fold is that there will probably be a rush to fill that void by other cons trying to take that prime summer spot.
Yeah.
Because
that was untouchable.
Right.
Because Otakon had it.
Right. Nobody would want to go same weekend or even weekends around Otakon in the Eastern Seaboard because you couldn't compete. So that's true. It would shake up the landscape, and I don't know which con is poised to step in and fill that void.
I've wrestled with that thought because some of the closest ones, like in size and date, are still not quite the same as Otakon. Anime Next in New Jersey, but that's more June, whereas Otakon is usually late July and August. And then there's also Anime NYC, which has been growing successfully.
That's also,
but that's November.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves a very big gap.
Yeah. But before we bury Otakon prematurely, we should point out that they are accepting donations right now. I have not donated yet. I'm wondering if you have. I'm going to tell you why I haven't yet.
I have not yet. However, one of the things I did find interesting is, because it's a not-for-profit organization, Otacorp is on Amazon Smile, where they donate a very small percentage of any purchase you do through Amazon Smile, and it's the same prices. You can set it up to donate to Otacorp, but I personally have not yet, partially because I didn't get paid till today, so I was waiting till payday. But I'm curious about your reason.
Okay, so I love Otakon. I would hate if anything happened to it. That sounds a little like a threat. But what I'm thinking is, when you donate to a Kickstarter and they break down in a pie chart like what we're going to use your money for, here's the deliverables, this is where it's going. With Otakon, it's just like, please give us some money, and then that's it. What are they going to use it for? I'd love to see like a bar, or like a progress bar showing how much they've earned. It's like, if we make 10K, we'll use it to like get our deposit back, or
right. I think something that, and this is my feeling as well, and why I also have not donated yet, is I'd like to really know more about what their situation really is.
And what if we all donate and Otakon still dies? What happens? I would just love some transparency there, because Otakon, I hate to say it, they do have a history We were just talking about the Oticon Kickstarter, the Oticon video game Kickstarter scam.
Where that wasn't Oticon
that wasn't
itself.
Oticon itself. They partnered with a video game studio, Studio Nasu, that was kickstarting $20,000 in order to make a video game about Otakon, taking place at Otakon. It would have characters like Ice Cold Water Guy, which anyone who's been to Otakon,
in Baltimore,
I think he came to DC. I'm not
one
sure.
time maybe.
Yeah. Just like legends of Otakon. And anyway, he didn't just make 20,000; he made 33,000, which he may have made more than that, and then he never delivered. But I mean the studio never delivered, and then Otakon said we have nothing to do with them.
Before we go down the route of assuming that Otakon doesn't know how to operate their finances and do that, because they might.
Yeah, they've been here for more than 20 years, so.
But it does feel like similar to kickstarting something, right? Like, what are we really paying for? Are we paying for you to, because you have an agreement you need to pay for and you don't have the money? Like, tell us more about like what is really driving your decision here, because I'd like to know, like, is that,
can we find this out?
I love Otakon. I want it to continue. Like, it's one of my favorite cons.
And it's definitely right here in our backyard.
Yeah, I think that transparency angle goes back to kind of this rollout. Is not only did they kind of stumble out the gate with getting this news out, all of a sudden it's out of nowhere they're asking for money, and now we don't even know what it's going to go to. That sends up some big red flags.
Right. I mean, I would assume it's going to paying some of the bills they have to pay. So like we talked about the convention center fee, which I'm sure there's something with that. They might have got some of their deposit back. They might have had insurance. This is all speculation, and we have no idea because we're not privy to any of that. But
yeah, it just says your generous gift to Otacorp helps us keep Otakon going, and you can. They suggest either anywhere from $5 to $200, and remind you that it's tax deductible.
Which it is.
Yeah.
They are a 501c3. But
sure enough, I don't know more than that what it would go towards.
So some other costs that maybe we didn't talk about that they definitely have on a yearly basis. And keep in mind, they're not selling memberships or haven't been. So I don't recall, did they refund last year? They did, right?
I think it was, if I recall correctly, some of it was possible refunds, some of it was roll over into the next year.
Okay, so I think they gave people the choice, and there's no way to know how many people chose to be refunded versus...
All registrations for 2020 were automatically registered for 2021. If you are unable to attend in 2021, you can request a refund. Usually they don't accept refunds at all.
Yeah.
It's a lot of logistical headaches.
Yeah. So they probably received some registrations before they gave the word that they were rolling over. But when was this announced? Because that would have been early. I'm trying to recall.
They announced on August 10th was their last update. So I can't see when the blog first went up, because I bet they announced it sooner than August 10th.
Yeah. It was...
It just says last update. I'm surprised that they didn't do a blog post with this announcement.
Yeah. Well,
again, finding this information has been weird.
Right. And that's what's kind of a little off-putting about it in general. And just before we close the chapter of like everything they have to pay for, I know for a fact, based on their disclosure, they have to pay legal fees on a yearly basis, and they have to pay for accounting on a yearly basis, and probably some other white collar stuff that you...
Yeah, just because they don't have the con doesn't mean they don't have taxes.
Right. You still got to file taxes. You still probably have to have somebody on retainer in case there's any legal issues. And I mean, Oticon is such a big con that their name gets... They have to defend their name.
They were in Metal Gear.
They were in Metal Gear.
They were credited.
Yeah. Credited in the credits for Metal Gear. They worked with Studio Madhouse to create a special film for their opening at one point. Like they've had to protect their IP, obviously. So that's not cheap. And I know that that's several $100,000 based on what they, for just like the legal, keep the lights on expenses, not even have the con.
Maybe by fans for fans, but they know when to bring in professionals.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, almost any convention that gets big enough contracts out certain services that they just can't provide, such as registration vendors,
Mhm.
Security, even like
AV, yeah,
fancy lines.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but turning to other things, we talked a little bit about lessons for convention runners, which a lot of that is have some in reserve. There are things that you can't predict, um, and just be transparent with some of the stuff when you do have to, kind of pass the hat around a little bit, so to speak. But what are some of the lessons for attendees that they can take away from this?
Lessons for attendees. Can you?
I'm trying to think about
Like,
that.
I keep coming back to, like, don't think of, how to put this. Even a con that's been around for a long time might not be around forever, and that sounds like a very negative lesson. But I think a lot of it is, remember that a lot of these cons are not for profit. That they do have to
They need
take care of them.
volunteers. They need
Yeah, it's
support.
it's actually, I think, Doug, what you're trying to say is don't take your cons for granted.
That
Right.
is, yes, that'd be a good way to put it.
Enjoy them. Don't assume that they're always going to be there. And I think we've seen this in other cases too. Not even big cons, so big and small cons alike, Otakon and others. There's been a lot of drama related to some other cons in the DC region, related to like MagFest.
Oh yeah,
and
Magfest was having trouble for a completely different reason.
yeah, not
Yeah.
financial, right? And
Mhm.
any number of things can cause a con to go out of business, even if they're not for profit, not for profit, bad management, a bad year, bad decision when it comes to moving location or time. Like I've seen several cons that had pretty good reputations, just mid-sized cons in particular with good reputations just suddenly go from being okay and growing to stumbling and going away after 2 years.
Yeah.
Like 2 bad years, and that could be enough to kill a mid-sized con.
Yeah.
And those changes happen faster than you think sometimes. Like that's the thing that always is, you wake up one day and it's like, wait, this con's, again, to use the Otakon example, wait, this con's in trouble.
Right.
So it's, and I mean, the only other thing, and I feel like this is kind of the old man wagging his finger at the young kids, but it's, we say don't take your cons for granted. You know, if you're going to a convention, support it. Like, don't try and ghost a convention and sneak in without a badge. Pay for your convention, because your membership does go to things that'll benefit you, and it makes your experience better overall.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And consider being a volunteer one year. And also there's the thing, like if I say, oh, I'll give a panel next year, I'll do a cosplay next year. I mean, there might not be a next year. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's fatalist.
But 2020 changed a lot of things, and obviously the impacts of what all has changed from that are still yet to be seen.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what cons look like. Are we still gonna have buffets? Are we all gonna crowd around in the dealer's room? Are people gonna wear masks? I mean, we were wearing masks kind of before because
Yeah.
a cool looking
This is the second
mask.
weekend. This is the second interview in a row. Masks becoming normalized, or hopes they're becoming normalized, came up. I was talking with
really
Lindsay
do
from
hope they become
A&N, and
normalized.
it's like, yes.
I mean,
John and I were ready for the pandemic because we already had a bunch of masks that we had started wearing when we got sick ever since our last trip to Japan.
Yeah, we just got into, right, mask culture is big in Japan, so it was easy for us to adapt to wearing masks. I know not everybody has adapted as quickly or easily, but I think AnimeCon attendees in general will probably be more receptive to that if that's what it takes. But
yeah, I feel like there's this feeling of like whatever it takes to get back to cons.
Yeah.
I miss them so much.
But I also wonder if we're going to see when they open the doors again and say we're going to have an Otakon or we're going to have an Anime Boston.
Are we going to see older people and people with young children sitting this one out?
Right.
If Otakon happens this year?
Yeah. It's there's a lot of question marks of will everybody show up again? Because
I think the first one that kind of can come back in normal capacity, and I use the word normal very lightly, I think there's going to be it's going to be a seesaw a little bit. There's going to be those people that like, I have missed conventions so much, I'm going full tilt, I'm wearing 5 costumes a day, going to every single panel I can get to, I'm buying the entire dealer's room, everything like that. But I think there's also going to be that other group that's like, yeah, I'm going to wait and see what happens and see if it's the pandemic's truly over before I start going.
And I've also heard several people say this about Oticon specifically. Like, Oticon is in the midpoint of the year, a little later than midpoint of the year.
Yeah.
It is highly possible that it could happen. I think it's safe to say that Anime Boston probably won't. I mean, it's still limited to 10-person meetups in Boston right now.
Yeah.
I don't even know if 10 people's allowed, but it's just like I've kind of given up on stuff happening early in the year, even if there have been announcements. I don't really think Anime Next is going to happen. I don't know, but Otakon I thought maybe had a fighting chance.
Otakon was my kind of most optimistic prediction of could probably still happen, and this news kind of took the wind out of my sails there. So, I mean, we're not going to make a prediction one way or the other, but it's going to be very interesting to see. So.
John's stepping out because the computer's about to run out of juice.
Okay. Well, while John gets the computer some more power, I do want to kind of put a more positive spin on this because I think it's a little bit of a depressing topic. So you guys have both gone to Otakon for several years, and I've gone for several years.
Several? I mean, I've been going since college.
Yeah.
I'm not that young.
Well,
I'm 34. But, I mean, I'm not shy about it.
Get off my lawn.
I've been going since I was 19.
Oh God!
And and Otakon, it was always my dream to go to Otakon. I remember like when I was 14, begging my parents to go, and then they like intentionally took the family on a road trip so I wouldn't like try to sneak out and go to it.
Oh jeez.
And then my friends came back with the and gave me the panel guide and stuff, and I remember the really early chibis. I remember that Tristan Citrine was a guest that year. Charlene Ingram.
So the question I wanted to ask though is, do you guys have some favorite Otakon memories to kind of put a more positive spin on?
Oh, definitely our top Otakon memories, having a convention panel with our dear friend Doug Wilder.
Not that guy.
Yeah, we've had. I think Otakon through the years. This is interesting because Otakon was like my first or second real convention. This is a weird story. I'm going to give you an aside. My first convention experience, I was doing a high school event, and we were in DC, and we just happened to be in the same hotel as Anime USA. So I didn't know that it was the same time, but I knew what was going on. A lot of people were very confused and weirded out by all the cosplay and everything else, but
you knew what was going on.
Yeah, but I was there for a different reason, not for the con. So Otakon, I think, was my real first experience at a con, and I remember the first time going. Baltimore Convention Center, obviously, just the inner harbor of Baltimore is amazing, and this was before the Hilton expansion, I guess, happened.
Oh yeah.
So this was a long time ago. I don't even know what year it was, to be honest.
Oh, I mean, it was like 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. my memory is not in that place right now that I can remember that, especially after 2020 feeling like 20 years on its own. um, but yeah, I remember.
Oh, I remember me and my friends were staying 8 people to a room.
Yeah.
And John, you were staying with the anime club. He was the anime club president in college. Well, our final year. He was our first male anime club president at college, because men can do anything women can do. I mean, maybe, but you apparently they only like the club secretary only got 1 room.
And
like
2
John
rooms for
stepped
20 people.
in.
Yeah.
He stepped in, looked, and then left, and then showed up at our door.
Yeah, I was like, that was.
Oh my God, are people gonna like share rooms like that after COVID?
That's a really good. I mean, I think hotel space. All of this is questions of like, what are people going to figure out on how will
is Otakon gonna have to pay cleaning fees if they like extra PPE fees or something? I don't know.
Probably, yeah. If it happens this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that my memories of Otakon kind of evolve over time, and I think this is standard for people who go to cons for several years and decades.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when you're young, you love going to like every panel. You want to
stay up all night.
Yeah, you stay up all night. You go to late night anime.
You have no money, but
right, no money.
You eat trash.
You buy very small trinkets in the dealer's room, or you have very little to work with, and you eat fast food for like every meal.
And then I remember we were like 26, and we both had real jobs, and we just stayed in a hotel. It was just 2 of us, and we bought so much stuff in the dealer's room, and we went to that fancy restaurant.
Yeah, we
had a completely different convention experience.
Right, exactly. It was, it evolves with how what you do, and then later we started giving more panels, so it was less like us.
Yeah, and then it was giving back.
Yeah.
First it was like doing whatever we could, and then it was like just making the most of it,
going crazy.
And then it was how can we give back to Otakon?
Yeah, and I think that's something that evolves a lot. I'll share kind of 2 memories that always stick out as some of my favorite convention experiences at Otakon, because it's a little bit of how crazy I have gone as a fan. I want to say it was Otakon 2003, maybe 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So this is before most dealers had the ability to take your credit card at the booth. You still needed to carry cash at the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was down to like $10, in my pocket. Could go more. And I see at one booth the action figure of the original form of the Devil Gundam thing. I'm gonna say, Pat, put a picture of it if you can in the podcast, because it looks like a giant crab with a Gundam on top. And this was just as I was coming around to being like, wait a minute, G Gundam's actually awesome. And I was like, how much is that? And it's like, oh, it's like $40. And I'm like, check my wallet. So then I'm like, can you hold it? And he's like, I can hold it for half an hour, and then I have to put it, I have to go back, and I will be right back. And so awkward nerd Doug, I'm still awkward nerd Doug, runs out of the dealer's room, runs up the stairs to the one ATM that has a bit of a line in the Baltimore Convention Center near the Starbucks little kiosk, right registration booth. I still remember it.
Oh my God.
Paying the $5, paying like the $5 ATM fee to take out $40, running back to the dealer's room and buy that crazy figure. And I still have it, and I'm so proud of it.
You got lucky that there was cash in that ATM, because usually they just run out by like midday on Friday or Saturday.
Wow, I could just visually walk around Otakon in the Baltimore Convention Center. Like, actually, a lot of the time during this pandemic, maybe this is kind of pathetic, but when I'm trying to fall asleep, I just pretend I'm walking around Otakon in the convention center. I'm serious.
Yeah, and
it just really relaxes me. And man, I just miss cons.
There's a lot,
especially con you've gone to year after year.
Yeah,
where
and
you know the facility like the back of your hand.
It's interesting you say that, because I could probably find my way around the Oticon at the Baltimore Convention Center very easily still. Like anywhere I'd want to go, I'd be like, oh, I know where that is. Mm-hmm. They did reorganize and relay out a couple times, but not too much. But DC, I don't think I could navigate it fully still. like we're still just learning it.
Oh,
and
guys,
it's a shame. That
Otakon memory. Remember when they pulled the fire alarm at the 4chan panel?
Yeah.
Before politics were as scary and anime as they are today.
Yeah.
Well, before there was like the anime political connection, that there was just a 4chan panel and it felt very harmless, except for somebody pulled the fire alarm and we were all outside. And actually, it wasn't very funny. Someone got heat stroke.
Right. This was like 2 years before the next fire incident, which was an actual fire, from my understanding. And
like something going off in the kitchen or something.
I was gonna bring up the fire drill. It wasn't really a drill, but like that's a memorable moment. Like everybody evacuating a convention center, probably 20 to 30,000 people leaving, and
I was taking pictures of cosplayers with Nutri-Grain bars, like giant Nutri-Grain bars, because remember there was that meme. No, Nature's Valley.
Nature Valley. Yeah.
This was back when Twitter was still fun. This was in 2014. Nature's Valley made like a comment like, "We love anime," and everyone was just like
carrying Nature's Valley.
And they were asking Nature's Valley, "Well, which anime is better?" And it was just it's such a different time.
That's such a different topic to get into, like brands and anime now, like, because now they're so much better at it.
Arby's writes about anime in every tweet now. Yeah. I mean,
And but like you also guys mentioned, like giving back and starting to do panels, and it's still surreal to me sometimes, like how many panels I've done at Oticon and how much that means to me, and like how much better I got at being a panelist because of Oticon giving me a chance. And kind of the best way to get over the stage fright was having to do that panel.
Yeah. My first panel ever was at Otakon. It was in 2013. It was sexism in anime with my friend The Patches on Twitter. I mean, wow, it would be terrifying to do a sexism in anime panel now.
This was 2013.
But at the time, it was just so welcoming. It was a group of like 100 people. And
oh, no, I think it was more than that. I think it was a large room and you probably had
we filled it.
Yeah.
And it's just it was just so friendly. I mean, you don't get that. I don't know. We sound like such old fogies. We're like, remember the old days? It's not like that today.
I'll tell you, having been on both sides of the panel now, that I have fond memories of Oticon as well. And I think my first panel at Oticon was several years after the 2013 one for you. I don't remember the exact year, but we've been given prime time slots and late night time slots. And both were great.
Was that, what time was our?
It was like midnight to 1 or something about them. I don't know. It was
just such a different mood than having a panel at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah. And just it's so to sit there and like I'll have those memories forever of being in those panel rooms and seeing people come in and how many people are interested in what you're giving.
In the same thing you're interested in. I mean, that's what's so great about Otakon. It's huge. It's like 30,000 people who all have at least one thing in common with you.
Yeah. And it's always neat when you're a panelist. And this is especially true at Otakon because it's such a larger convention. Of you have that moment of you're going in and you realize the line outside the door is not people waiting to get into the panel that's before yours. They're in line for your panel.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I still like remember like, you know, talking weird time slots. This is one of my other favorite memories is Otakon 2019 may have been, or maybe it was 2018. Again, they all start to blur together. Doing a panel with our mutual friends Tom and Pat about giant robots, and it was like a 9 a.m. panel. And I just remember being so tired and like going to the little coffee shop there, getting like a mini growler of cold brew coffee, finishing it during the panel, and then it came to time for me to like defend or talk about how much I loved Die Rugger 15 or Vehicle Voltron, realizing that I'm basically caffeine drunk as I'm ranting about this, and because I'm realizing it, I'm just leaning into it further. And this is why I still love Otakon, is they have these moments, and
you know,
I really want to see Otakon. You know,
I want to see them get through this. You know, after this, I'm going to send them an email. I mean, no one's stopping me. I'm going to be like, hey, you know, I have some misgivings about donations. Where is it going? I bet I'm not the only person wondering, because I was just thinking, I want to take Eva, our daughter, to Oticon.
Yeah.
Ever since I found I was pregnant, I'm like, oh, we can do Oticon,
The
kids
kids track,
programming, yeah.
And like, I mean, I've seen you at other conventions, but there are people I still only see at Otakon once a year, and I will be really upset that if that part of that friendship ends, because it'll be so weird. And yeah, so I guess we're rooting for Otakon. I guess is the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, we've said some things. We've
speculated about some stuff.
Yeah, we've told baseless rumors, and but deep down, we just really want Otakon to survive.
We really love Otakon.
Yes.
I mean, it's been so many years of really good memories, some fun times, some interesting times when we've had to evacuate and other things, but like great memories of Otakon. Always will have those, no matter what happens. But I really want to see them get through this so that we can get a couple more years, hopefully, in DC and get a feel for what the real DC Otakon is.
Yeah, they were just coming into it.
They were just coming into it. They're only a couple years in. People are still learning the ropes of DC and
learning the layout of the center.
Where do they want to eat?
Yeah,
the local gems for places for food, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it feels like, you know, Otakon was really getting into the groove on that now. I think last year would have been a great Otakon, which unfortunately couldn't happen. And I hope they can come back strong, and either this year or next.
Then the one thing I'll just kind of close with is that if they have to shut their doors, and we hope it doesn't come to that. I hope it's kind of how ADV Films, like this is almost 10 years, probably 10 years now, kind of just changed their name and their branding, but it was the same core people working on everything as they became Sentai Filmworks and everything like that, and Section 23 Films.
Yeah.
If it comes that they have to shutter, I would love to see them take that kind of method. You know, like, okay, we're different, but we're still at the core the same people.
Yeah, and Doug, that's a really interesting question and thought about, can a convention, if they have to stop using the Otakon name or rebrand or do something, start a new organization. I don't even know like how any of that would work.
Yeah.
Otakon Plus.
Yeah, can Otakon come back?
Neo Otakon.
Can a con like start now and become what Otakon is? I mean, I think it can, but I think it takes years. So it would be.
Yeah, imagine starting a 20,000 plus convention from scratch. You can't. You'd end up with like an extra hour in the ball pit kind of situation.
Right. We've seen this happen repeatedly where people
scale too fast.
Or think that, oh, running a con's not hard. We can run our own con, and it's hard.
Yeah, one of the reasons Otakon is so successful is because it started as with 500 people in attendance.
Yeah.
I think it was Penn State or.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they just grew a little by little to what we have today.
So. Maybe with the right people. So like, you know, what really it comes down to, I think, is people are what makes the convention happen. If for some reason there's financial trouble and they can't have Otakon, maybe those people get involved and start a new convention or get involved with other local conventions and turn them into something better. So I hopefully that's what happens.
There's a lot of
let's hope Otakon doesn't die.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about this again in a couple months and have some good news. And maybe if we get really lucky, we can continue the discussion at Otakon. That would be awesome.
That would be great.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. So I think that's all the time we're gonna get into tonight about this. But thank you guys for making the time. Where can people follow what you guys are up to?
Well, they can follow me on Twitter at Lauren in Space and at Gunpla101. And
yeah, I'm not very active on Twitter, so better to follow Lauren if you want to see what we're up to. we collaborate on Gunpla 101, but I think Lauren is more of the face and I'm more of the behind the scenes kind of
The face.
the talents. I don't know. And I'm the guy who.
Well, that's where you can find us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Okay, good. So, and I will personally attest to lots of great tips on Gunpla 101 again. It's helped revive the hobby for me. So thank you guys. And once again, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. If anybody else has anything if you guys have questions about kind of Otacon's news or anything opinions, don't forget to reach out to us. You can send us an email at podcast@animecons.tv. AnimeCons TV is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Don't think we have a TikTok yet, but we are all over the place. Just look us up on AnimeCons TV and you'll be sure to find us. If you want to get in touch with me personally, I'm at Nigoki, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.